I'm still admitting people.
Hello. Hi, sir.
Hello there. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, everyone. Good morning from Malta. Probably some of your places. Afternoon. Just a little bit. We're going to wait a little bit more because there are more people coming into the meeting, okay, the webinar. So we're waiting about 1 or 2 more minutes and then we can start. Guys, I'm going to just wait, ask for you guys to please keep your microphone on mute. Sorry, mute. So, so we start and then we don't have any noise. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I think we can start as we have 14 participants. We're going to have, if there is anyone else coming, we can just accept them, no problem at all. Okay, I hope you all guys are okay and safe. Trust you all safe. Basically, today we are going to run this webinar, to talk about the job opportunities and the most promising careers in Malta. We have here the Mr. Robert Sultana, who is the General Manager of the VacancyCentre, and he will obviously be talking about what, he's going to be the host of the webinar, okay? I'm Alex Garcia. I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager here at Learnkey, and obviously you can ask me any question if you want, related also to education, but today the webinar is about the jobs opportunities, okay? I'm gonna invite Mr. Robert Sultana to start, and then if at the end of this the webinar, we're going to have 10 minutes of Q&A questions, so you can ask any question directly to him, okay? Thank you very much for coming to our webinar, and you can start, Robert.
Very good. Thanks a lot, Alex. Good morning or good afternoon, depending your location. Nice to meeting you all and to make your connection. For this morning, I prepared quite a round of key points that I'd like to share with you to make this session as enticing and interesting as much as possible. I try to cover quite a number of key points from a perspective of a recruiter, and I will be sharing with you some outlines of the employment market here in Malta and how the employment market is shaping up during COVID times, and also about the opportunities, benefits, the conditions one can expect, what are the employment practices. And towards the end as well, I will be highlighting some of the typical salaries which are to be expected across the different job functions we shall be discussing. As Alex rightly saw, I'm Robert Sultana. I'm the General Manager of VacancyCentre. By means of an introduction, VacancyCentre is a local recruitment firm. We have been established for the past 20 years on the island. And our focus primarily is delivering recruitment services within the finance, compliance, and technology realms. For this morning presentation, I will be covering initially a general roundup of Malta, what to expect, where are we located, size of the market, etc. Some highlights about the employment market. Following with that, some outlines relating to the benefits, conditions, and practices related to the employment market. The salaries on offer, the typical salaries on offer, and then some guidelines, some highlights from a recruiter's point of view, and what we would expect to see on a curriculum vitae, on a CV. So to start off, let me just highlight a couple of pointers on Malta in general. Malta, as most of you will probably know, is an island in the heart of the Mediterranean. Our economy is based on tourism, iGaming, financial services, aviation, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals. And these are, I would say, the prime industries that shape up the economy here in Malta. Overall, I would say the market it's fairly stable in terms of a political and economic environment, and the economy is quite a thriving economy from an economic standpoint. In fact, to share with you some statistics, as April of 2021, the unemployment rate stood at a low level of 4.1%. It climbed a bit during COVID months, which was around 5 or 5.5%. But now, thankfully, things are stabilizing, and now that cases are going down, the unemployment rate is oscillating around 4 to 4.1%. The economic growth rate, it's an indicative of 5 to 6%. And even for the coming 3 years, the Central Bank of Malta is expecting the economic growth rate to be in this region. Inflation rate is in a healthy situation of 0.8 to 1.2%. And right now, the situation with COVID is that 70% of the adult population has been already vaccinated with at least one dose. And that is ensuring that the cases keep low, which in turn, of course, it will affect the employment market to encourage more employers to invest and to hire more people. In terms of the Malta economic performance, when benchmarked with the average of the EU bloc, it's above average. And as a country, we hope to keep on pushing towards that benchmark in the years to come. So that's a bit of an introduction about Malta. Let me shift now on the employment side of things. The market is predominantly, there's quite a heavy demand for technical and proficient candidates, particularly those who are qualified with either a professional course program, like for example, ACCA, or a degree from a reputable university. And these are the two key factors which a lot of employers locally consider when engaging hiring professionals here in Malta. UK qualifications are fairly popular, and I think part of the reason this is coming from the fact that Malta has been an ex-British colony. So through time, we have adopted quite a number of British standards and processes. So this comes at no surprise. And for an accounting profession, ACCA or CIMA or ACA, all of them, which I believe are UK qualifications, are quite well known and well sought after by the employers here in Malta. And they would expect that any accountants or any auditors, they would have these professional qualifications on board, or coupled with a university degree, or with a professional qualification as a standalone. In terms of demand, there is quite a healthy demand for EU citizens and Maltese nationals, particularly if already working and residing in Malta. Perhaps it's a bit far lesser when it comes to candidates who are not immediately residing in Malta, which they would need to relocate. As things stand as today, I think from an objective point of view, people within the financial services and the accountancy profession I would say that as we speak, there's quite a fairly number of available people to fill the positions that we currently have in the local market. So that stands to reason why a lot of employers on this particular segment of the industry, they're primarily keen to undertake conversations and interview processes with people already working and residing in Malta. I think the situation of employers who are contemplating of initiating interview processes with people who are outside of Malta are typically more for technical positions, like, for example, accountants within the insurance market, actuarians, you know, those type of very mathematical or very technically positions which require a high level of technicality, which perhaps sometimes might be a bit difficult to find from readily available people here in Malta. Demand for EUs and non-EUs for IT functions remains quite strong. From the three areas that we handle, finance, compliance, and technology, I would say the IT remains the most problematic to find people available, particularly for functions as software developers. So that explains why a lot of the clients remain open to consider EUs and non-EUs. But coming back to the accounting and finance and compliance functions, there's quite a strong demand for EU or Maltese nationals, or again, people who are already residing in Malta, because some of the positions, they would require people who already have a warrant or have an understanding of the tax practice in the country, or else have quite a robust knowledge of the local regulatory framework. So when you consider these aspects, it stands to reason why a lot of the employers in Malta would appreciate and would entertain already conversations with people who are already available on the local market. The typical recruitment process normally unfolds into a three-stage process. You have a first interview, a second interview, and normally it unfolds to a third interview, which is the contract of employment or of service discussion. In terms of negotiations, there is an element of negotiation of a salary at the senior level most often. Less is the norm at the junior or mid-level. Again, it depends on the function. I'm referring to very broad functions, which are typically expected or found in the market. And for these type of positions, normally any salary negotiations will be held at senior level. Typically, clients would have quite a budget, a defined budget in place. So the flex of negotiation would be sometimes kept and limited for this particular reason. Interviews for candidates in neighboring countries are considered typically for people coming from Spain, Italy, Greece. Part of the reason, I think, it's because in these countries there's quite a mutual similarity in terms of culture, and most of the people coming from these regions, they tend to settle in fairly quicker into the local market. But we have had occasions as well of employers wanting to consider also professionals coming from other jurisdictions. Sometimes the decision boils down to whether the person has been relocating in the past already, so whether they have experience with relocation. And of course, the element of experience, the breadth of experience and the qualifications that the person comes with. So that was a bit of a roundup in terms of the employment market. Let me just highlight some of the employment benefits that one would expect in Malta. Typically fairly popular are the fuel allowance, mobile allowance. Those I would say a lot, predominantly 60 or 70% of the employers here in Malta would bundle the contract of employment with these allowances. Also because there's the fact that, for example, with a fuel allowance, there are some tax advantages for the candidate to benefit. So that is one of the allowances which is fairly popular in a lot of the contracts. There is also the health and life insurance, which is quite another percentage, making up as in terms of popularity on the contract of employment. We have noticed as well fairly recently, I would say in the past 1 year, 1 year and a half, that there are quite a mushrooming number of providers that are putting forward an occupational pension scheme. And gradually, we're seeing a lot of employers that are gradually slipping in an occupational pension scheme, which is typically put forward by the employer and administered by a third-party private entity for a pension scheme, a private pension scheme to be put forward to the employee of the company. In more sales-oriented positions, you come to expect bonuses, which are related to performance bonuses, but we have seen as well bonuses depending on the performance of the company at large, which can be like a 10% or 20% on top of the base salary of the individual. What we have observed, particularly since COVID struck, we have observed a shifting pattern, whereby before there was quite a push by the employers to put forward benefits or perks like lunches or benefits like health and life insurance. More often, it's becoming a popular, demanding aspect by candidates that they are requesting to have more flexibility. I think the aspect of remote working has led quite a number of employees to appreciate, and even employers to appreciate the benefit of remote work. And the element of flexibility has become quite on the forefront by a number of employees seeking to have that aspect negotiated within their contract of employment. I think the situation is a bit of a situation in between, whereby you find like a combination of either 2 days working from home and 3 days from the office, or a combination of the two. Of course, in some work environments, that is not always possible. For example, if you're considering in a banking environment, whereby you have a retail shop and therefore you're welcoming clients on a regular daily basis, and that's not possible to entertain. But on some other situations whereby, for example, in an accounting profession, that the person is not really meeting clients front-facing on a daily basis, that becomes more of a possibility to accommodate. In terms of recruitment processes, these are carried out initially online. We find typically that the first interview is held or coordinated, conducted over Zoom or over Skype, and only further at an advanced stage in the recruitment process that a face-to-face would be really required. Normally, when a face-to-face is required, we have an indication that the client is propense to consider the profile and to possibly make an offer at a further stage. So the face-to-face aspect becomes more of an indicative aspect when the client, the employer, is more inclined to engage, to hire the individual. So that is a bit of an outline of the employment benefits. I've dedicated a section as well in terms of employment conditions. This by no means is a full understanding or a full explanation of what are the conditions of employment here in Malta, but the highlights, the points I chose to present this morning are the more familiar or the more commonly expected questions to arise. For example, the probation period is typically 6 months, even though it can be elongated depending on the seniority of the position. For example, for senior management functions, this could be extended even up to 12 months. In terms of typical hours of work, we find 40 hours of work per week for full-time positions and 15 to 20 hours per week for functions which are more of a part-time basis. There have been as well some additions in terms of the vacation leave and in terms of the changes that there were through Parliament very recently. Nowadays, the total number of days per year of vacation leave by law, it's up to 27 days. In terms of sick leave, one can expect to have 15 days of full pay and 15 days of half pay for a particular year. In terms of a notice period, when a person resigns from his employment, if it's between 1 month and 6 months during the probationary period, normally the employee has to give 1 week of notice. The same goes for the employer, of course. If it's 6 months to 2 years, 2 weeks of notice. If it's 2 to 4 years, 4 weeks of notice. If it's 4 to 7 years, 8 weeks of notice. And in the eventuality that the employee has been working for the company for plus 7 years, there is 1 week for every additional subsequent year thereof, up to 12 weeks of notice. In terms of holidays, in Malta, we find that we have 9 public holidays and 5 national holidays. For whoever who wants to get more information with regards to the typical benefits, can easily consult the DIER.gov, which is the Department of Industry and Employment and Relations, which is a government entity and provides all the required information for prospective employees looking to take up employment in Malta. The other section is employment practices. In terms of practices, candidates typically apply either directly with the client or they decide to be represented through a recruitment agency. So these two are the more popular mediums of hiring here in Malta. Companies which are involved in finance, compliance, and technology, and case in point, even for accounting and audit roles and tax as well, these companies, they tend to rely heavily on recruitment agencies. So we still experience quite a heavy reliance by these companies to come to us, to seek our assistance when hiring candidates for their vacancies. Gaming companies, on the other hand, they tend to have their own internal team of recruiters. So reliance predominantly on agencies when it comes to gaming companies is far lesser. Then you find the typical job boards, which highlight, of course, the name of the company and the position being sought for. And these are normally, job boards are normally utilized for entry to mid-level positions, which is the fairly more common positions one would expect. There's also as well, of course, a government jobs website, which presents positions which are published through the government entity. But to be honest, from experience, these jobs, they tend to be more of a non-technical nature as opposed to more technical jobs, which are either advertised directly with the company or through recruitment companies. Recruitment fees, this is important to highlight because there is sometimes a bit of a misconception. Recruitment fees are generally paid by the employer, not by the employee. Also because we had some cases which have been reported in the media that non-licensed recruitment agencies, they were actually charging the employee rather than the employer, and that is against the law. It shouldn't be the case. And in fact, one word of advice, if you engage with a recruitment agency here in Malta, make sure that this agency is licensed and is a legitimate operation, which is actually verified and confirmed by the authorities. You might be asking, where can you get this information of the list of recruitment agencies which are licensed? And you can get them directly from the DIER.gov, which is again the Department of Industrial Employment and Relations, which is a government-funded entity, which first and foremost licenses recruitment companies, but as well provides a list of all the licensed entities here in Malta. So prior of engaging with a recruitment agency, I strongly suggest you have a look at this list just to make sure you are liaising with a legitimate provider. I decided as well to do some highlight with regards to what kind of salaries are to be expected when considering job opportunities here in Malta. I will highlight some of the typical positions within the accountancy regime, as well as compliance and technology. For example, to start off with accountancy, for typical entry-level roles, which we refer to, for example, as junior accountancy roles, the salaries, they tend to vary from 15,000 to 21,000 euro. All the salaries I will be mentioning are all based in euro denomination. For mid-level accountancy, the salaries range from 22 to 30K. And in this bracket, normally the candidates would be considered partly qualified, so therefore undertaking studies towards their ACCA. Accountants who are fully qualified and working towards their warrant or already holding a warrant, the salaries would be in the region of 31 to 40K. And the higher you go, of course, the higher the salary. For finance manager, you would expect to earn around 40 to 45. For a head of finance position, something in between of 46 to 65K. And of course, for more senior ranking roles like a CFO, a chief financial officer, or a finance director, the salaries would be in the region of 70K and over. When it comes to compliance positions, for a junior compliance analyst, the salaries are 20 to 26K, slightly higher than the accountancy disciplines. For a compliance analyst, 28 to 32K. For a compliance manager, that normally would require what we refer to as a PQ, meaning that it needs to be approved by the MFSA, which is the sole regulating body here in Malta for the financial services sector. The salary for a compliance manager would be around 45 to 55K. And for more high senior ranking officials like a chief compliance officer, the salaries would be at around 75K and over. When it comes to technology, the situation is slightly a bit different because the salaries compared to finance and compliance, they tend to be fairly more attractive, especially the higher you go in the seniority. For junior developers, for example, we immediately start observing that the salaries are on offer between 20 and 30K, which, for example, when compared to the junior accountancy, which they start from 15 to 21, junior developers are already well paid for having little experience. And that, I think, if you ask me, it's predominantly the reason that fairly lower people are available for employment for a junior developer. And the development function, it's one of the mostly well-paid disciplines here in Malta. For mid-level developers, the salaries, they start going up from 30 to 40K. Bear in mind, of course, these are average indicative, but they are quite legitimate indicative salaries. For a senior level developer, we're talking about salaries ranging from 40 to 50K. And then if you're considering more senior level positions like head of software development, a team lead, or a technical architect, we're talking about salaries of ranging from 65 to 75K. At the end, positions which are of a CTO nature, meaning a chief technology officer, the salaries would be in the region of 80K. So as you can see, the mid-level tier or the senior level tier and even the higher bracket, the salaries are very much aligned to each other. The only difference there is at the junior level, whereby the technology roles, they tend to be a bit more attractive than what one would expect for the compliance and the accountancy. One word that I can say about the accountancy profession is that a lot of accountants, they start off with fairly low salaries, But as soon as they start getting more modules of ACCA and they become more versed in the subject, and they cover their Fs, and they start studying towards their Ps, and of course, as soon as they move over to get their warrant, the salaries at that stage, they start becoming more negotiable, more attractive. So for the accountancy profession, I would say they start low, but then at a further stage, they start climbing up the salary ladder fairly at a fast pace. The last section, just some words of advice on the curriculum vitae. Of course, as recruiters, we come across quite a wide range of CVs. And there are those CVs which are based like with the European pass, which is a fairly standard CV layout. If you ask me, I'm not really a big fan of that, because it kills off any presentation that the candidate might come forward with their own presentation of the CV. And it's not really so fairly straightforward when you come to assess and go through the details on the CV. So yes, you have the European pass, but personally as a recruiter, and I think I can fairly comment even for other interviewers or decision makers, we are more appeased when we have a CV which is not in a European CV format, which is coming directly from the layout that the candidate provides. It's very important, the CV, it's not very long. If you manage to condense it in one pager, that's brilliant. If you manage to have a 2-pager CV, that's okay. But I would say CVs which are 3 pages, 4 pages, 5, 6, 10 pages, I've seen even more than 10 pages CVs, those are quite disheartening to even start looking at them. And by experience, I tend to say that CVs which are very long, they get discarded straight away. Remember, everybody is busy. Nobody has really time to go and read a lot of information, which might be trivial. So the more summarized version you have of the CV, the more it will stand out. I think another important aspect of a CV is the neat presentation. And by neat presentation, what do I mean? You have all the information fairly presented in a neat manner that you can immediately gather where there are the contact details, where there is the experience, what is the section of the qualifications, that the order of work experience is in chronological order, and you're not showing like a work experience at the top, which you have worked on 10 years ago. And then you have the most recent in the second place, but there's a chronology of the work experience presented. It's important that you don't have any silly spelling or grammar mistakes. They tend to stand out very much on a CV, and it shows the lack of care by the candidate when they have these silly spelling and grammar mistakes. Accomplishments. Remember that in the CV, you should be highlighting not really the duties and the responsibilities you had in the past, but it's more the accomplishments that we are looking for. So therefore, if you are in a sales function, what kind of sales markup have you managed to accomplish for the firm? If it's managing a team, how many people were you managing? If there was growth in the management of the people you were directly supervising, things that you can factor in a more concrete manner. Aside from that, the covering letters, I see a lot of CVs which are very often accompanied by a covering letter. I'm not going to say this is like a historical aspect that one comes to expect, like more in the past than what is in the present, because we still receive CVs which are accompanied by a covering letter. But to be honest, preparing a covering letter when this is not specifically requested, it's a waste of time for you to prepare, and it's a waste of time for whoever is receiving the document to read. Most often, as a recruiter, I can tell you that the covering letter we always discard. Nobody has time to read the covering letter. And especially if you make your pitch over email that you are applying for a position and you are sending over your CV, avoid getting into too much verbose details about why you're applying, what's your experience, why you decided to reach out. You know, the shorter, the sweeter. And the more you can get to the point, the more would be appealing by everybody involved. So that's a bit of a highlight with regards to the curriculum vitae. This is basically rounding up the presentation for today from my end. If you would like to seek more information about the range of our services and also the job opportunities that we offer, you can go directly on our website, which is www.VacancyCentre.com. And just in case you would like to reach out to any member of our team via email, you can contact us via jobs@VacancyCentre.com. Just in case if you have any queries now, I would be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Just to let you know, guys, I'm going to send an email to all the participants and with all this information, email address, Robert's email address and his team, and also the website address, okay? So you're going to receive an email very shortly. So if anyone has any question, you know, feel free to ask directly to Mr. Robert. Any questions?
The starting point, yeah, it's the most difficult.
Yeah, but if you want to, if you prefer writing it, the question, you can write on the chat as well. Maybe some people, you know, they are shy to speak, so you can just write on the chat. Okay, we have one.
Okay, and do you offer internships? I think is the question.
Yeah, but this, yes, we do have, but we can talk about it if you send us an email, and we can give you all the information about the internship. Welcome. Right, I believe that it was clear for everyone, Robert. So
yeah, it's a good sign.
It's a good sign. There is one here. They send it to you, Robert.
Hello, I would like to know if I can do a refresher course in Malta. I think this one is for you, Alex.
A refresher course, which means that probably he's graduated or something like that and wants to come here. Yes, we have many, you know, a wide range of courses, and you know, we can talk about it. If you send us an email with a more specific, so we can understand what exactly you're looking for, we'll be more than happy to reply to you. Okay. Anyone else? Robert, I think that, you know, was really clear. Thank you very much for your time. It was really good. And I believe that everyone enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you, everyone. And if, as I told you, we're going to send you an email. There is a copy of this. We're going to send a link with this, this webinar, which is being recorded. So if you want to go through again, and if you need anything, and if you have any question that you need to ask, just send us an email. Okay. Thank you very much. Good evening or good afternoon. Here, good morning still to everyone. I'll see you, and thank you very much. Thank you again, Robert.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye then.
Bye.